The next thing we want to talk about is basic style. And when we talk about style, we're really talking about the way that a writer uses words to manipulate the language and express their ideas. And this is another thing that it'll be really important that you take notes on. And what I would do if I were you is I would make a checklist. And every time you write a paper for this class, I would consult the checklist that you write while you watch this lecture and the lecture on academic style. And make sure before you submit the final draft that your paper meets all of these requirements. So the first thing we want to talk about when we talk about basic style, the basic things that we need to remember about the way we're using the language, the way that we're arranging the words, and the words that we're selecting. The first thing we want to remember is that we want our writing to be as concise and clear as possible. You don't want to take 10 words to say something that you could say easily in 2 words. You want to be really concise and really to the point. You're not trying to win any competitions as far as word length or anything like that goes. So you want to be really clear and concise and to the point, and that's with any writing. Never use 2 words if 1 word is enough. You want to be sure that you avoid weak constructions, specifically modifiers like really and very. I was really tired. Instead of saying I was really tired, instead select the better word. I was exhausted. Instead of saying you were very mad, say you were furious. So you want to be sure as you're proofreading your papers that you look through and make sure that you have no reallys and no varies. They don't belong in writing. They're weak constructions. You want to avoid jargon, slang, or euphemisms. And jargon is like if you're writing something really technical that not everyone is going to understand what you're talking about, and you use technical language without defining it, that's jargon. Slang is a big one, and I'm going to give you some words that I want you to avoid in your writing. You want to be sure, of course, that you avoid y'all. That kind of goes without saying. A lot, A-L-O-T, that is slang. We don't want to use that. There are some other words that I come across often, and I always try to remember this lecture what they are. Stuff, a lot, stuff, y'all. We don't want to start our sentences with well or now. Like we don't want to say, well, the first difference is, that well is just extra. Or now, Lubbock is very different than Las Vegas. We don't need that now in there. So you want to be sure you avoid those things. You want to be sure you avoid gender biased language, which is really like calling, a mailman, a chairman, things like that are biased towards the male gender. You want to use terms like mail carrier or chairperson, so on and so forth. You want to be sure that you seek original images. Remember that I myself have read thousands and thousands of essays, and you want to use imagery in your papers that is original, that's not cliched, that your reader hasn't read over and over and over. And you absolutely want to avoid cliched expressions. Things like cold as ice, hindsight is 2020, all is fair in love and war, there's no place like home. These are all things that we've heard a million times. They're cliched, they're overused. You want to present your reader with original ideas. So another thing that you go through and look for after you look for those weak constructions and you look for any slang terms, you go through and you make sure that your paper and your writing is free of cliches. You want to seek original images. They show a lack of original thought, and to just regurgitate a saying or a cliche that we've all heard so many times, like I said, shows a lack of original thought. So what I want you to do now is I want you to take out a copy of your paper, and I want you to read through it, and I want you to look for the words really and very. Highlight or circle them. You'll need to replace them with a stronger construction. Something that can be helpful when you're looking for specific words in a paper. It can be really easy to miss them because your eyes, when we read from left to right and from top to bottom, your eyes are going to read what you meant to write. So what I would do, especially if you're looking for words, specific words like really, very, a lot, y'all, things like that, I would start from the very last word in the paper and go to the top. So start with the bottom and go to the top. And if you read those words out of order, it's going to help you find the words find these words that don't need to be in your paper because you won't have any context. Your eyes won't skip over them. So you want to take out any really or very. You want to make sure you don't have any cliched expressions or any slang. And you can pause the video here while you read through your paper. And again, I know this is probably the 4th or 5th time you've looked through your paper, considering the last video lecture and this video lecture. It's something that you have to do. You have to be sure you're looking over your paper and looking for all these things individually. So pause the video, look for these weak constructions, look for the cliched expressions, look for slang, highlight, circle, so when you rewrite, you know you have to replace those. And when you're done, you can restart the video. Another thing that you want to do is avoid beginning sentences with coordinating conjunctions. And coordinating conjunctions are fanboys: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. We don't begin sentences with any of these words, okay, at all. So again, you want to read through your paper and make sure you don't have any of these coordinating conjunctions at the beginning of a sentence. You also want to be sure that you're varying your sentence structure. You should have simple sentences in your paper. You should have compound sentences in your paper. You should have complex sentences in your paper and compound complex sentences. Varying your reading style is really going to help your reader maintain their interest in the paper. This sentence has 5 words. Here are 5 more words. These are all simple sentences. 5-word sentences are fine, but several together become monotonous. Listen to what is happening. The writing is getting boring. The sound of it drones. It's like a stuck record. The ear demands some variety. Those are all simple sentences. In the next example, we have some variety. Now listen. I vary the sentence length and I create music. That's a compound sentence. The writing sings, a simple sentence. It has a pleasant rhythm, a lilt, a harmony. I use short sentences and I use sentences of medium length. Of course, in this picture, they used a coordinating conjunction at the beginning of that last sentence there, which you're not to do. But you can see that they've varied their sentence structure a little bit. There are short sentences in there. There are longer, compound, complex sentences in there, and the writing sounds better. And sometimes, even though, again, we're not starting our sentences with the coordinating conjunction, when I am certain the reader is rested, I will engage him with a sentence of considerable length, a sentence that burns with energy and builds with all the impetus of a crescendo, the roll of the drums, the crash of the cymbals. Sounds that say, listen to this, it is important. So that's one sentence. And you can tell the difference between this long, beautiful sentence and these short, choppy sentences. Now I want to warn you, when you're writing, you want to be sure that you vary your sentence length. And by vary, I mean you need to vary. I was in graduate school, and as an English major, we were all in this particular class for this example. It was a research methods class, and we're all writers. And so we wrote these research papers, and all of our sentences looked like this. They were all gorgeous. And our instructor passed back our papers, and she said, I want you to count how many words are in the last sentence of your first paragraph. So everybody counted, and we thought it was a contest. And some students had 27 words, and I had 34 words. And one student even had 47 words in one sentence. We were so proud of ourselves. Such beautiful writing. And she said, are you kidding me? And we were shocked. She said, you cannot write, because all of our sentences were like that. All of our sentences were these huge, long sentences. And she says, I can't remember from the beginning of the sentence to the end of the sentence what you were saying at the beginning. You have to vary it. So you have this long, beautiful sentence, and that's awesome, but it took the reader a little bit to get through. And there's lots of commas, there's lots of pauses, there's lots of clauses in there, lots of ideas. So the next sentence in this particular example, we'd want it to be short. We'd want it to be simple. We'd want to keep it 5 words long. And then maybe another long sentence, and maybe a medium length sentence, and then a long sentence and a short sentence. So don't be scared to use short sentences in your paper. You definitely want to weave them in. And that was a big eye-opener for us who have spent our entire lives writing grammatically correct, gorgeous, 5-minute long sentences to understand from a reader's point of view that that's exhausting. So vary your sentence structure. Before we talk about academic writing, I want you to think about, in the college setting, how academic writing differs from other types of writing. And make no mistake, in this course and in all of your college courses, you should be gearing yourself towards academic writing. There's a special language that goes with academic writing. There's a special tone. There are things you have to remember when you are writing academically. Now, what we've talked about until now in this lecture has just been some basic rules to remember. Now we're going to go forward and talk about specifics of academic writing. And again, everything we talked about before and everything we'll talk about in the second half of this lecture will be graded in your final drafts of your essays. And these are all things you need to look for as you proofread and as you peer review. So you should be making a checklist. It will serve you well. Okay, so academic style. The first thing that I want you to remember, and the first difference I want you to understand about academic style, is that academic style is very, very serious. It's very formal. Okay, the tone or the way that the author is expressing his or her attitude is thoughtful. It's fair, it's earnest, it's respectful. And I know I skipped over this one because I meant to do that. Academic writing is dispassionate. It's clinical. It's on the outside looking in. Okay, that's going to be especially important to remember as we get to the end of the course and we talk about argumentative compositions. It's very serious, it's very formal. It's fair, it's on the outside looking in. When I was in a sophomore level literature class, I wrote a paper about Macbeth, Shakespeare's Macbeth. It was a very serious paper, very serious academic tone. But in the middle, I kind of made a little joke about Lady Macbeth. She's kind of a weird character, and I thought it was kind of clever. And I'll never forget that my instructor wrote, "We cannot make jokes in academic writing." Okay, this is not conversation. This is not a conversation we're having. It's serious and it's formal. And you have to choose words and you have to construct sentences that make it serious and formal. You will not try to be funny. And you will not try to be casual. It's not going to sound like a conversation you and I would have if we went to Starbucks for coffee. And that's why we can't use slang. That's why we can't start our sentences with coordinating conjunctions and say well and now and all of those things we say, particularly in West Texas conversation, because it's not casual. Okay, this is not informal writing. It's very formal. It's not careless. It's not overcome with emotion or sarcastic. It's not conversational, disrespectful, and it's not one-sided. So you really, really have to think about that. Is the tone of my writing serious and formal, or is it casual and careless? And if it's casual and careless, you need to go back and you need to pick some new words and you construct some new sentences, because the tone of the piece of all of your academic writing, not just for this class, but all of your other classes, needs to be formal. Academic work is not unchallenging work. It's not casual writing. What we're trying to do with academic work is we're trying to answer challenging questions. We're trying to explain something. We're trying to analyze and persuade and argue. We want to draw connections between things in our writing. And above all, we want to stay focused. We don't want to ramble. In our thesis statement, if we say we're talking about something in our thesis statement, that's a promise we make to our reader. And every single word in the paper has to serve the thesis statement. Something super, super important to remember. You want to be sure you write an active voice rather than passive voice. Active voice emphasizes the subject of the sentence, who or what performs the action. The mother scolded the child. In this particular example, the mother is performing the action of the sentence. The mother is scolding. We want to write an active voice. Passive voice is the other way, and this is not something we want to use in academic writing. Passive voice emphasizes the action. The child was scolded by his mother. It was the same exact situation. The kid is being scolded by the mother, but because we've switched it around there, now the focus is on that verb, was scolded, and not on the subject. So we want to be sure that our sentences focus on the subject instead of focusing on the verb. And you'll notice that this first sentence, the mother scolded the child, is 5 words long. This sentence is 7 words long. And I know it's just 2 words. But the first sentence sounds cleaner, and it sounds better, and it's more to the point. Okay, you want to be sure that you're precise and that you're not too wordy. And if we stick with active voice for our academic writing, that's what we'll get. So as you're looking through your paper, as you're revising, anytime at the end of a clause, at the end of an idea, you say, by something, by his mother, the farmer was eaten by the zombies, by, look for this word. And know that you might have a passive voice sentence if you have this word in it. And if you do, then you need to rewrite so that it's an active voice. So the subject is performing the verb. You want to avoid contractions like weren't, wasn't, didn't, couldn't. You need to spell those out. You want to avoid rhetorical questions. And you should not have question marks in your paper at all. And I don't mean take the question marks out and put a period on a sentence that should have a question mark. I mean, you write statements, don't write questions. There's no answer to rhetorical questions. So, your reader can't answer you. So why are you asking? Rather than saying, have you ever thought about the differences between Lubbock and Las Vegas? You just say, you tell your reader, you make the statement. You're the writer, you're in charge. You say, there are many differences between Lubbock and Las Vegas. No rhetorical questions. Which brings us to the big one. You need to avoid first and second person. This is huge, and this is the hardest part of what writers, particularly in this course, the hardest thing that writers face. You cannot refer to yourself in this paper, in any of the papers you write for this course, except with the exception of a couple of the response papers, and those instructions are explicit that say you will be allowed to use first or second person. Always avoid first and second person in academic writing. You don't say I, me, mine, ours, us, we. Let's is a contraction for let us, which is first person. So you need to look through your paper and you need to find all of those first person contractions or first person pronouns, and you need to rewrite the sentence. You also have to avoid second person, you and yours. You can't speak directly to the reader. Now, avoiding first person doesn't mean that you substitute your name in for third person. I've had students who, instead of just rewriting the sentence in third person, they wrote, instead of saying, I went to the football game, they said, Daniel went to the football game, and Daniel was the writer, and that makes no sense either. You have to figure out a way to say what you have to say without using these pronouns. And again, it's the biggest thing. And what I would do if you're working in Word, I would just do find and replace and look for these because they'll sneak past you. And this is another case, if you read the paper backwards, these will stick out to you a little bit further, a little bit better. And this is worth a huge chunk of your grade. If you use first person or second person even once in a paper, that's 7 points off automatically because I believe it's so important for you to learn how to do this properly. All right, now it's your turn. You want to read through your paper. You want to mark any contractions you need to revise. You want to read through your paper and mark any rhetorical questions. How can you restate them? And here's the big one, first and second person references. Do you have them? If so, you're going to have to spend some time editing them out. You're going to have to figure out a way to say it so that it's objective, so it's on the outside looking in. You don't involve yourself in the paper. You don't mention yourself. You don't mention our society or what this is doing to us. You don't talk directly to the reader, okay? The last thing that I want to talk to you about is MLA formatting. MLA formatting is very standard, but all of your papers should be formatted in the following way. You should have Times New Roman 12-point font, double space lines, 1-inch margins all around, heading, header, first line indent on all new paragraphs. And there are examples on the MLA formatting or the MLA resources link in Blackboard that'll show you exactly how to do this in Microsoft Word. Formatting is just a teeny tiny thing. It doesn't have anything to do with the writing, but it's the first impression that your reader gets of the paper. So you want to be sure that you follow these steps very carefully. And it shows attention to detail. You know, if you've done these things, if you set up your document correctly, that shows that you're paying attention to detail and doing what's asked of you, which is a big part of the college experience. So now that you've watched this video, you need to go back. You've made your checklist. You need to go back through your draft. You need to edit for all of the things that we've talked about in all of the videos so far. Then I want you to revise and turn in a fresh copy. In the next part of this assignment, we'll look for some new things. So you want to make sure that you have thesis statement, structure, and organization, that all of your topic sentences point directly back to the thesis and tell the reader what the paragraph's going to be about. You want to make sure that you've followed all of those standards for basic style, that you've followed all of the standards for academic style, and that you've followed all of the standards for MLA formatting. Once that's done, you need to, like I said, make the changes in your original document, save that document, submit it again, and then once you've done that, we're going to have another round of things that we look for as we're editing and revising, and then we'll turn in a final draft later.